Thanks, Jen. I really appreciate you having me here and everyone there at Hively. I'm really excited to be here and share my story with you. I hope that this session can provide some inspiration for everyone who's interested in moving your life and changing your life in whatever way you're thinking of. And I hope that I can also provide you with some more concrete knowledge if you're interested in moving in the direction that I've moved in. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story and how I started in changing my life from working sort of full-time as an anesthesiologist with a house and family into living primarily in international travel and also van life. The story starts back in around 2007 when I met my husband on a train leaving Penn Station. And we started to have a conversation, and he spoke a little bit about his current life and his interest in eventually living in Panama. His current life was just working as a executive in marketing. And I, at the time, was doing some medical missions in Guatemala and had always sort of been attracted to the Central America region and Spanish. I have a history of a mother that was born and raised in Cuba. So I'd always been interested in that part of the world and always wanted to improve my Spanish language skills. So we started to talk about these things, and fast forward to many years later when we were together and living in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and living the usual type of life. And we started to talk more about changing our life and really following some of our dreams to live in other parts of the world. And at the time, we really had an interest in learning the Spanish language and moving into that type of a life. So we managed to get a month off, each of us, and we went to Spain. And we planned a little bit of the trip the way you would plan a vacation. And a lot of the trip we really didn't plan at all, and just sort of took it as it came, went to places that we had never heard of, tried a place for a weekend. We went to a little beach town called Cadiz that we didn't know much about. Someone had mentioned, decided that was a great place. And so we spent another 5, 6, 7 days that we hadn't planned and just had this time of exploring in an unplanned manner with what felt like a lot of time for us at that time, because as you know, people who live in the US, we get a week off, we get 2 weeks off maybe, and we jam everything we possibly can into that type of a vacation. So this was really a different kind of experience for us, and we really enjoyed sort of the idea of moving slowly and doing more of a living type of thing in a different area. So after that, we really started to put things into gear and change our lives and plan so that we could start what we thought would be international travel at the time. So we started that in early 2020. We went off at the time actually to Colombia, and we had a great time. But as you know, 2020 was a difficult time for travel. And in March, we got called back. So called back in the manner as we were in Colombia, we were having a great time, we were living the life that we had planned, but no one knew what was going on and what was going to happen. And so we felt the need to come back to the US. And at that time, my husband had retired and I had started to work just a couple of months during the year, slated to go back in the summer of 2020. And when I went back to work, I sort of said to my husband, okay, it's your job now to figure out what we're going to do in the fall when we're done. We don't have a home. We don't know if we're going to be able to do international travel. How are we going to live our lives during this pandemic, doing what we thought we were planning to do? And so he knew that I had always been very interested in van life. I'd been following it on Instagram, and we actually have a daughter that had a van in a very different type of way, but a van for sort of adventure sports. So I've been really interested in this. So he rented this van that you see there, this crazy van that was not at all what I was interested in terms of van life. You can't stand up in there. It has no bathroom. You have to cook outside, standing outside at the back doors. And he rented this thing for 6 weeks. And in fact, a very good friend of ours said to him, "Why didn't you choose something that Davida would like?" Which made him very nervous. And he was very concerned that he had made a big mistake. But as it turned out, it was the best thing that we had done. We took this van, this crazy van that you can't stand up in, out for 6 weeks. We left from Florida. We drove across the country to the San Diego area and then up the coast all the way up to Seattle and Washington. And we had the best time ever. So we decided that this was clearly going to be part of our travel plan, although we were still interested in international travel and still planned to do it. We really, really enjoyed this. And so in 2021, we decided to purchase our own van, which is on the next slide, I believe. There it is. So this is our baby. This is a van. It's not an RV, and it doesn't have a lot of the things that RVs have, but we love it. It's just the right size for us. You can park it in a regular parking spot, and it's got everything we need. And I can tell you more about that as we move along. You could go to the next slide. This is inside the van, as you can see. The bed is behind me. That was one of the things I wanted. This van that we had rented for 6 weeks had the situation where you have to make the bed every day out of the table. So if you want to eat, you've got to change it. If you want to sleep, you've got to change it. And I felt very strongly that I wanted a van that had a permanent bed that we didn't have to be putting together and taking apart all the time. And we have a great kitchen in there. I think I'm making some chicken there. We can go on to the next slide. So this is a shot of the bedroom, and believe it or not, it's a small space. It looks pretty much like that now, but also a little different because this is our home and I do like to decorate it. And currently the picture on the side is no longer there, and it's full of some things that we've gotten from our international travels actually on that wall at this point. So just like you bring home things and put them up, we try to do that in a very tiny little fashion. You can move on. This is one of our very favorite trips that we did. We took the van down Baja California all the way to Cabo and back up. And this is in a town called San Felipe. And as you can see, we had a very nice beach spot right there. It was a wonderful, wonderful trip. And I'd love to share more about that with you. This is another one of my favorite van trips. This is Grand Tetons, which is an amazing national park. The national parks are just incredible. And again, we can talk more about the best ways to visit those and how incredible our country is. Can move next. Here's a picture from when we went to the Kentucky Derby just this past spring. And, you know, people always think that van life is camping. It really isn't. I feel like van life is more like driving your studio apartment around. And this is a Kentucky Derby event called Thurby. And I like to let people know that, yes, we did come out of our van looking like this. And this is a shot from our pet sitting. This is actually a pet sit that we did in England. We very often watch dogs, and this home had a dog and some bunnies. And this was a small town in England that we never would have visited had it not been for pet sitting. And we've had some really great experiences pet sitting, and I can also tell you a little bit more about that if you're interested.
Davida, thank you so much for sharing your experience. Some questions for you that kind of just come off right off the bat. So how did you go about outfitting and actually preparing your van for long-term travel and living? Like, what were kind of like the must-have amenities and things you wish you would have known beforehand?
So there are a number of things that you do want to have with you as you travel. And actually, that's one of the things that I love about van life, because when I'm in the van, I actually feel like I have everything that I need at all times. And so it actually is wonderful for the anxiety that people may have about traveling. When you travel internationally, we usually just bring 2 carry-ons and you don't have as many of your things with you. But in the van, I just feel like I have everything all the time. And since the van sort of functions as your car, if you go somewhere, you don't have to think, gee, should I bring a jacket? Do you think it's going to rain? Should I bring my umbrella? Because you literally have everything that you would ever need with you at all times. I know that's not exactly the answer to your question. I'll tell you a little bit more specifically the answer to your question, but it's just one of the things that I love about van life that I just wanted to express to everybody. I just think that it's just so wonderful that way. But as far as things that you want in your van, I mean, it's really all the things that you need for living, but trimmed down. So, you know, we have a kitchen and we have a full kitchen, but we don't have breakable plates because they move around in that cabinet a little bit. We have, you know, our travel mugs, which we use much more often than a mug that doesn't have a lid. We have, you know, all the things that you would need for cooking, but we recently bought these amazing pots and pans that have handles that come off and then attach so that you can store them as if you're storing a bunch of bowls all inside each other without the handle sticking out. So there are a lot of things that you can sort of get that are set up for small apartment living and also for van life. Another thing you really have to think about in van life is temperature. And you're sort of at the mercy of what the temperature is outside. We don't really have a heating or an air conditioning system other than what you have when you're driving the car. So of course we have air conditioning when we're driving the vehicle and we have heating when we're driving the vehicle. But when we're parked, we don't have either of those things. So for instance, for hot weather, we have 2 fans that are built into the van. And then we've got 2 other clip-on battery powered rechargeable fans that we can use if it's really warm outside, and doors that can open and windows with screens. And for when we're somewhere where it's cold, we have something called a Mr. Heater Buddy, which is a propane heater that we use never when we're sleeping, but only when we're awake. And then we actually have found that you can sleep with hot water bottles. And in that small space, if you put 2 hot water bottles in your bed, you are comfy all night. We've been in temperatures less than 30 degrees and we've been fine. And it turns out that actually cold is a lot easier to deal with than heat. You can get warm when it's cold, but it's harder to get cool when it's hot. Other things you need all the emergency equipment that you would need were something to occur while you were driving, but you know, more maybe than what you normally have in your car. So lots of emergency equipment. I put in a smoke detector, CO2 detector, propane detector, all of those kind of safety mechanisms.
There was a question going off of kind of like the safety mechanisms, a question around how you figured out your health insurance abroad.
Mhm. So health insurance abroad. So yeah, so traveling in the van, we're primarily in the US. So, you know, it's our usual health insurance, and you want to make sure that you have health insurance that covers you in all the states and that your insurance isn't really state-based. So that's just one of the things to be aware when you're signing up for health insurance. It's a very large topic. I'll touch on a couple of things. Originally, I was doing Cobra. I was working a number of months, and every time I would sort of get on the insurance for my employer, and then I would Cobra. But more recently, that situation's changed, and I ended up going theoretically on the national healthcare system. But while I was investigating that, the insurance company actually told me about a policy she thought would be good for me. So it's really not on there, but it's national across the US and very much like those policies. So you're covered that way, and make sure you have national coverage. As far as international travel, either internationally traveling Canada and Mexico in the van, or other places we international travel, we get an international travel policy each time. There are some policies that you can get for a whole year. There are policies you can get just for your trip. There are some people that don't have US-based insurance at all. If you're traveling the majority of the time and you'll be in the US, they vary, less than 3 months a year, less than a certain number of months a year. You can actually go with an international global health insurance and not have US-based health insurance. A number of people do that for cost reasons. I personally have kept my US-based insurance and just get travel insurance when we're traveling internationally.
Thank you. There's a lot of questions in the chat. I'm just going to kind of go through them in order. So we might be ping-ponging between different kind of topics, but let's go with that. So a question from Cynthia is, how old were you when you two left your full-time jobs?
So my husband is a little bit older than I am. He's about 10 years older than I am. So when he left his full-time job, I think he was 62. And I, at that time, was about 52 or so, and I've been working part-time since 2020. So he retired the end of 2019, and I went to part-time work the end of 2019. So a little on the younger side for many Americans, and that's been something that's been a little bit difficult for me. Because I feel a little bit like, am I allowed to be doing this? I'm not exactly sure who I get permission from other than myself, but it has been something that's been interesting for me to figure out whether I feel comfortable or not comfortable with it. So far I have been working some number of months a year, although each year it's getting a little bit fewer months as we go along. But because of that, I haven't, he recently is on Medicare, I am not, and that presents its own issues. It's been good to meet other people along the way. There are people who have retired at 30, at 40, and there are people who retire at 70. So it really depends on you and what you want to do with your life.
Going back to kind of your experience with traveling, if you had to vote, what was your favorite trip and where was it?
So I'd have to go back to the two trips that I mentioned. I'll talk about the van trips. The trip that we took in Baja California, which is really Mexico, was one of our favorite trips. It was really an interesting trip. It was the first time we'd really taken the van out of the country. We did a lot of research. There's always stories about safety. Is it okay to do this? Is it not okay to do this? There's a lot of information out there. And it was really pushing the barriers for us, and we really enjoyed that trip. We went to so many small towns along the way. We really had no interest in Cabo. We did stop there because we were there, but it was by no means our destination and by no means our favorite part of that trip. There's so many small towns along there that are really beautiful and really interesting. And we luckily ran into no problems whatsoever. Everyone was really, really nice. Everyone was really helpful. We did go through some of the checkpoints, and there were authorities that came into our van and looked around, but they were all very nice, respectful. We didn't have any issues whatsoever. And it was really an amazing trip, and we're thinking of doing it again. My other really great trip was going across the northern part of the US, and was part of the reason that I actually changed my working scenario around, because I had been working summers and I said, no, I need to go to Montana, and I need to go to Banff, and I need to go to Jasper, and I need to go to Wyoming, and all of those things need to happen in the summer. So let's change the work around to fit the life. So that was also an amazing trip. There's so many. Internationally, again, I'll mention Mexico. We went to a town called San Miguel de Allende just recently, which is just an incredible place. And we did Thailand and Cambodia and that whole area, Thailand, Cambodia. Laos was amazing. Not somewhere that I had ever really thought about going, but we found it really amazing. We were supposed to be there for 5 days. We ended up staying 2-3 weeks. It was great. So I know that's not really the answer to the one trip. I can't really give you one. There's so many that have been amazing.
Yeah. Some other questions are more around, I guess, van living. Was there a shower in your van? If not, like, how did you wash? Also, what expenses do you pay? Oh, wait, this is about pet sitting. So let's focus on how do you shower in the van, and how do you wash?
I love that one because everybody wants to know that one. So that's variable depending on the type of van that you have slash RV. So as I mentioned, we have a van. We have a van that was built by an individual, a guy from Colorado who moved to Pennsylvania. We bought it from him when he was living in Pennsylvania. He said it was the third van he had built. His wife was pregnant. They needed something larger. So we have a van that is not coming out of the factory as an RV type of van. So there are vans the same size as ours that are built from the factory and have sort of more in them as far as a full bathroom, full shower, those types of things. We have really like a portable toilet, and we don't have a shower at all. But what we do have is 40 gallons of water in a stored water tank and a giant sink with a wonderful faucet that sprays, and basically you can do a shower in there. Not really a shower, but you can get washed up. So if we're in the van and we're sort of not near civilization and we're boondocking, or we're in some of the national parks that actually don't have shower facilities, we'll, we'll do wipes, and we'll do sort of a sponge bath in the shower. And, at times we'll boil some water so that we have heated water so my husband can shave and he doesn't look so scruffy. And you'd be amazed how well that works, especially in the right climate. So the climate is really important. My stepdaughter said, "You don't need as many showers as you think you do," which is really a true statement if you're in the West. If you're in the West where it's dry and it's cool at night, that's really a true statement. If you're in the Northeast in the summer, it is just not a true statement at all. The other thing that we do as far as showers are, sometimes we're at campgrounds and they have showers. And we also have a gym membership. So we are members of a gym that has national membership. They're all over the country. And that's a really great way to shower. So there are sort of all variations on taking care of that. And it just really isn't a problem at all.
Great. I'm going to go through some of the more van-related questions first. One is, were your van itineraries planned heavily? Were they more freestyle? And how much boondocking did you do versus full hookup sites? And where did you park the van overnight when you were abroad?
Okay, good ones. So we do a combination of, I would say, campgrounds, both national parks, state parks, very rarely a private campground, but occasionally. We are members of something called Harvest Host. I don't know if people have heard of that, but it's a network of wineries and farms and churches and breweries that allow you to park overnight there. So they don't tend to have facilities, but they tend to be fun places to go. So if you, park overnight at a brewery, you go in and you have a beer and you meet people. And if you park overnight at a winery, same kind of thing. So they don't tend to have facilities, but they're great places to park and they're beautiful. And we've been at so many Harvest Hosts that have just been really interesting and beautiful and wonderful. Where else do we park? We do boondocking, and we're trying to do more and more of it. At first, we really planned our trips out, and then we lately have tried to plan them less and less and leave a few days. So we'll plan a lot of it, because especially if you're going, for instance, when we did our northern trip across the US, if you want to go to some of the more popular national parks in summertime, you really need to plan in advance. So we would plan certain days at those national parks, but then we would leave a number of days empty in the middle, knowing that in the West, it's a lot easier to boondock and just sort of park wherever you want to park. Or there's another app called iOverlander, which is a resource that gives you all kinds of information about places for you to park that are, allowed where you're allowed to be. We do occasionally park, we've done, not very often, but maybe 3-4 times we've done the Walmart parking lots. Cracker Barrel is actually a place that promotes RV parking. So we do that, and then we get to have breakfast in the morning. So really a number of different ways to manage it. And then sometimes we're in friends' driveways.
I think we covered water, we covered cooking. There's some curious about like internet connectivity on the road. Like, how do you handle that?
So we do not yet have Starlink. We've talked about it, and I think it's a good way to do it if you really need internet. For instance, if you're someone that's working remotely while you're doing van travel, then I think Starlink is likely your best bet. We don't do that, and we don't have that. We really haven't needed it as of yet. So what we do is we use our phone service, so we can use that as a hotspot at times. We park in front of McDonald's or Starbucks at times. We love to frequent libraries. You would be amazed at the beautiful libraries across our country. We've been to libraries in many towns in Montana. We've been to a great library in Fort Worth. There are a lot of areas that have really cute, wonderful libraries. So we really kind of enjoy doing that. If we really have things that need to be addressed, need to get done. I actually applied for hospital privileges last year and a medical license while we were traveling across the country in the summer. So every once in a while, I would need to stop at the library, make some photocopies, make sure I could fax some things, that type of thing. So that's really worked out well for us. It really has not been an issue.
Yeah. Iris is asking, so she's saying, I'm assuming before this you were a low maintenance kind of gal, travel light, flexible, unflappable, and she's asking if you need a chill personality to do this. Quote, I'm thinking in such a small space, I'd strangle my husband, end quote. And I'll tie that in with a question around like, would you recommend this for single females?
Okay, so lots of things in there. A number of people ask me and my husband, how do you live together in such a small space? What happens if you have a fight? Where do you go? And I think we're just really lucky. We're perfectly happy living in our small space. We don't fight very often. And if we do, maybe someone takes a walk. Um, I don't think you have to be very chill to do this. I am definitely a type A personality. I am not really a chill person. So I don't think that that's required, although many people who are doing this are chill. And I aspire to be chill, but it's just not who I am. I'm very neat and organized in the van. So when I had a house and, an apartment, I'm not very neat and organized. I come home, I throw my coat wherever, I have a pile of laundry. I have things, that I'm going to deal with later. You just can't do that in the van. And it's actually really amusing because my husband's always noticing. He's like, wow, you're like really particular when we're in the van about where every single thing goes. And it's one of the things I kind of, again, enjoy about van life is that I know where every single thing is that we have in the van because it has to be there. You can't have a mess. You can't leave your dishes in the sink. You just can't do those things, and you sort of don't want to, I think, because it's such a small space. There isn't anywhere to throw the things and not look at them. So it works out. Single female. So there are a number of single females doing van life. And if you're interested in that topic, there's a lot of information out there, and I think you can tie into that network. I think it's probably the same way that you would say, gee, can a single female live in the city? Could a single female live in the country? Could a single female go, here, there, or wherever? And I think it's, a matter of common sense and doing some research ahead of time and making sure that you put yourself in the right situation and not in the wrong situation. And, we're aware of that even as the two of us, we've very, very rarely been in a situation where we didn't feel safe or didn't like something, but I'll mention we drove up at one time to one Harvest Toast and we sort of looked around and we said, I don't think so. And we went and stayed somewhere else. So, it's just like the living that you do usually, just being aware.
Switching gears here a little bit and talking about your overseas pet sitting. So, what do you get for your service and how long do you usually pet sit? As well as, and this is a utility question of what expenses do you actually pay when pet sitting? Is there utilities? Is there anything that we should be aware of?
So the pet sitting that we do, and I'm sure there are many different ways to do it, but the way that we do it, we basically pet sit in exchange for a place to live. So we come and live in the house. You can almost imagine that it's an Airbnb, but there's a pet that you have to take care of. So it's very similar circumstance to Airbnb, but there's a pet you have to take care of. So, you buy your own groceries, but, at the same time, people will say, eat whatever you'd like to eat. And, depending how long you're staying, if you're staying a day or two, then you may not eat the food in the refrigerator. But if you're staying, for instance, we're at a pet sit that we're staying for almost 2 weeks right now. So of course we should eat the lettuce and we should eat that tomato and we should eat that avocado because it's not going to be any good by the time they come back almost 2 weeks from now. So, you have to use your judgment, and it depends what those people say. We've had many pet sits, more than one, where people have left us like a banana bread that they made for us. And one other person actually made us an entire chicken casserole dinner. And some people leave you wine, and it all depends on who the people are. But basically that's how it works. So we don't get paid, and we don't have expenses other than our own personal living expenses. And we do pay for our travel to, come to the pet sit and to leave the pet sit. Most of the time we don't have transportation when we do a pet sit, especially internationally. So we look for pet sits that are located where there's some public transportation, but I've seen pet sits where they say that you would have use of their car. So again, it's variable.
Yeah, and I share the referral link that I believe Davida you use trusted house sitters. Could you
Do.
explain what this referral link is?
Sure, sure, sure. So the referral link is a way that you could join the membership. I think there's a discount through there, and I think they give us like 2 months free if we refer somebody to join. So I put it up there. Why not? We've enjoyed Trusted House Sitters. We've done all our pet sits through that platform. Again, I liken it to Airbnb just because people are used to that platform. But you can browse pet sits, you can put in location that you'd like to be in and the dates and put a saved search in. And then you can look and see what's come up, and you can put a notification so that you'll get a notification if something comes up in that area that you've put in for those dates. And basically what you do is you apply, and I think they usually take 4 to 5 applicants before they close it out. And then you'll see that the person is reviewing the applications, and then they'll usually reach out to you. The standard way it works is that they'll reach out to you and you'll plan to do some sort of Zoom or FaceTime call to sort of get to know each other. They're basically interviewing them. You're interviewing them and they're interviewing you to see if it's going to be a good fit. And after the interview, they'll choose somebody. And if they choose you, you'll get a notification that you've been chosen. And then you can choose to either confirm or, say, no, I'm not interested in that pet sit. So that's pretty much how the process works. And we're actually at a pet sit right now. The background that you're looking at is a photo I took the other day. We're in Switzerland. But we've done them all over the US and so far internationally, just in Switzerland and England, but we've got one coming up in a few weeks in France and one coming up in a few weeks in Portugal. So
Amazing.
it's a really nice way to feel like you're living in the country.
That's amazing. I know that a unique part of your travel experience is that you do not own an apartment or a home. And curious, how have you thought this through? How do you manage long-term living? And there was a question about like, what do you have to do with having to have a residential address for like Social Security, IRS? Like, how do you manage all of that?
So correct, we don't have a home or a permanent structure that we're living in. You are correct that you do have to have a domicile, and there are many ways to go about doing that. And there are a lot of people that are doing this, a lot of people that have been, especially in the RV community, RVing for years without permanent bases. So there's a lot of information out there on the internet where you can find out, best states and best ways to do that kind of thing so that you have a domicile. In terms of everyday living, we love not having a home. Number one, you don't have the expense. So when people ask, how do you afford to do this? Well, one way we afford to do it is that we're not paying for a home while we're traveling. So we only have our current living expenses. We don't have sort of double the expenses, which is what you normally have when you go on vacation. When we used to go on vacation, we would pay for our home and for vacation. Now we just pay for traveling. So that's very helpful. We have a mail service that we're able to see all our mail electronically. And if there are certain pieces of mail that we need physically, we can have them sent to various places. We'll often have those things sent to a friend or family member that we anticipate seeing in the near future. We have at times had those things sent to a general delivery post office box in a place that we knew we would be in the near future. Similarly, with obtaining things that you need, Amazon, you don't have to have Amazon delivered to a home. You can have Amazon delivered to a locker. So we'll sort of plot out, well, let's see, we know we're going to be in this town in 3 days, and that says, it delivers in 1 day. So we could have it sent to an Amazon locker there and be there to pick it up at that time. So there are really a lot of ways to make all these things work. And again, I'll stress so much information out there and so many people doing this and so many different solutions that people have for these issues.
For those who are interested in doing van life, trying pet sitting, like what would be your advice to get them started and really make the most of the experience?
So I think, everyone's different. I think you have to know yourself. Some people would jump right into it and just like, buy a van, sell their house, and go do it. Other people would want to try it out a little bit first and see what they think. So, it's very easy to rent a van and go for a trip close by to your home and see what you think and how you like it. Same with pet sitting. We actually did a couple of pet sits in the beginning. We did pet sits very close to friends and family that we were visiting. And we just wanted to sort of get some under our belt, and we did a few pet sits in areas that we were very familiar with. So, you could do a pet sit in the next town over, and it would make it very easy and comfortable knowing you sort of have your backup and you know where things are and that type of thing. So it's very easy to dip your toe in, I think.
Do you currently have a timeline for how long you intend to do this?
Hmm. Um, we really don't. When we first started doing this, as we were traveling across the US, we were thinking very much about, gee, where will we buy a home? Maybe we should buy a home, now so that we'll have it later. We should look every place we go and maybe see if that's where we want to live. And we finally agreed that no, we're not going to do that now because we don't really see that we want to give this up as of yet. And so, for all the reasons that I stated before, we don't want to own a home right now. And we certainly don't know where we will want to own a home in some number of years from now, because who knows what lives will be like. We have 5 kids between us. What will be happening with them? Where we want to be. Do we want to settle internationally? Do we want to settle somewhere in the US? Do we want to settle near one of the kids? Do we want the mountains? Do we want the ocean? I just don't have the answers to any of those questions. So I've given myself the liberty not to have to answer them. And we don't have a plan not to do this at this point. We do think at some point it might be physically harder to live in the van. It does require a lot of bending, scooting by each other. The way we're set up, one of us has to crawl over the other one in the middle of the night to get out of the bed. So we do think at some point it might be more difficult than it is now. But until that time comes, or until we really just get tired of it, we're in for the long haul.
What's been the reaction from your friends or your other family? And from your perspective, what's been the most valuable or lasting impact this experience has been giving you?
So the reaction from friends is variable. The reaction from people in general is variable. Some people, we say, oh, we live in a van. They're like, oh my God, that's so cool. I want to do that. And other people look at us perplexed and don't understand at all, or just don't either just don't really get it in any way, or sort of think, well, why would you want to do that? Or do you have to do that? We sort of say, no, we live in a van by choice. We really like it. So it's been mixed. From as far as our family and our kids have been really supportive. Some of them are happy for us because we're happy. Others think it's cool because they also want a van, or they really like camping or that type of travel. Another one of our kids, I think, relates more to our international travel than our van life travel. So it's a little variable across the board, but they're all really supportive. And as far as like extended family, I think they think it's great because we come and visit.
I know in your little description about yourself, you were saying that you're looking to break free from the traditional life. What advice would you give for others who are looking to break free? And do you sometimes miss practicing your profession?
So I think one of the most important things really is to know yourself. I have a little saying that goes sort of like wherever I go, I take myself with me. Sort of relating back to the idea of, knowing yourself. Like, I know I'm type A personality. So, how does that impact my style of travel? What's important to you? What things do you need? People that feel that they didn't want to do this, that's great. They should not do this. It's like everyone has to find their own style of travel. Some people like luxury travel, and that's the type of travel that they want to do. I like to say that we're scrappy, and I love being scrappy. And I find it fun and entertaining to travel the way that we do, and other people just wouldn't enjoy it. So I think you really need to know what makes you happy and what are the things that you need in your life to be happy, and make sure that you're getting those things. And as far as, doing it, again, dip your toe in the water, see how it feels. But at some point after you've dipped your toe in and you've decided that you're interested and you like it, at some point you just have to take the leap. Take the leap and do it.
Yeah, so inspiring and so amazing to hear about this whole experience. Want to turn it back to the participants. Feel free to come off mute. It could be just your comments, it could be a reaction, it could be a question. I'm happy to open the group up for the next last 10 minutes.
I just want to say great job, Davida.
Thanks, Deborah.
Yeah, hi, Davida.
Sorry,
Hi.
David, go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm super excited about this Hively in your chat today. We are I'm getting close to retiring, so I actually have a van on order, and this was like perfect timing. We're planning to go around and do some photography at all the national parks. Yeah, so I love your journey. I wish I was small enough to fit in a traditional van, so I have to do something a little bit bigger. But yeah, thank you for your talk. It's been great.
You're welcome. And I'm looking at you in your boat, and I just want to say I love the water and we love boats. And as we've been traveling, especially when we were in Baja, we saw people that were traveling the same places we were going, but they were in a sailboat. And we actually considered it, and we thought, could we do this? Could we do this on a boat? And then we decided we don't know anything about boats. And I think it seems really hard. I wish I had grown up in a boating family, but yeah, I think it would be an amazing way to do it as well.
We would love to do it on the boat. That's a time factor. You can obviously travel a lot quicker and further with a van than you can with a boat. You know what I'm saying? So
yes.
Yeah.
There was a question that was asking, why did you choose a van versus an RV?
So for us, we love the portability and the size. We like being able to, so we can take the van and use it at times like a car. We can go places that are harder to go if you have an RV. We can get into sort of smaller spaces. We can go into campgrounds that maybe don't have spaces that are that large. We can just do, for us, we just feel more comfortable with the size, that it doesn't limit us. It doesn't limit us, and it doesn't make it hard. I think driving something larger is harder. And actually, we just came off 2 weeks of renting a van in Italy. And we got a van that was just slightly larger than the one that we have. But the roads in Italy, I would say, are half the size of the roads in the US. And a lot of the cities, the roads in the cities are really, really tiny. And so driving the slightly larger vehicle in the slightly smaller area was not as much fun as driving our van in the US. So I would go as small as you're comfortable with, but some people want a bigger space for more of a living, or they want to stay still more often. Maybe they want to go and live in various places for a month, which is actually on our list. We'd love to go and live in various cities in the US. I've got a list going for a month each, maybe in the van, maybe not in the van. But if you're looking to do more permanency, then maybe you want something larger. And if you're looking to move around a lot, then maybe you want something smaller.
Wonderful. Any other comments, thoughts from the participants? Feel free to come off mute as well.
I have a quick question. Did I see either it was a motorcycle or bikes that were on the back of your van? Do you have alternative transportation when you are in an area?
So those are 2 trail bikes on the back. We've got that great cover. People often think it's a motorcycle, but they're actually just 2 trail bikes. And so we do use those primarily for recreation. I think the idea of having e-bikes is an amazing idea and would really be very nice for when we are somewhere that maybe the distance is a little longer to the grocery, but we don't feel like moving the van or something of that nature. But I'm not sure that we want to add that much weight. We've been talking about it lately. We're sort of at our weight capacity in our van, so I don't think that we can add e-bikes to ours, but I think that if you can add e-bikes, it's a great thing to do. We do see people traveling, they have a trailer and they have a motorcycle on the back, or, they're traveling in a really big RV and they have a tiny little car on the back. And a lot of people, there are also other variations where people have maybe a truck and then they have a truck camper on the back, or they have a vehicle and they're towing the camper so that you can disconnect when you're somewhere and then you can drive your vehicle and go somewhere while your home stays at the campground. So there's so many different ways to do this. For us, we love, again, the van because it fulfills everything that we like. We can still take it out and go somewhere local. If we want to go to a restaurant, we just drive the van out and go to the restaurant. But some people would maybe want to leave their setup and just drive their car out. But we don't like the idea of having to travel with such a long long vehicle because it's harder. So, you just have to sort of find your sweet spot, maybe try a couple different things out and see what works for you or see what your priorities are.
I have a comment. I'm Davida's son, and I love the van life and can't wait to hopefully one day have some form of van in my life. And I think it's a great thing, and I do fully support it and think it's a really cool way to spend your time. Yeah.
Aw, thanks, sweetheart. Good to see you on here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Thanks for
I do
joining.
have a quick follow-up question. You mentioned you bought a customized van that somebody bought and renovated, because I could tell you had some kind of neat paneling in the van. Is it hard to find a customized van? I mean, I'm sure it's a lot easier to get one that comes straight out of the factory. And how did you find that customized van? Thank you.
So it's not hard. There is an app. I'm trying to remember. I think it's just like on Instagram. Maybe it's Van Life or something of that nature. If you start searching around on Instagram, you'll find it. And there are tons of people selling vans that they've put together on their own. And we really like that. Again, we recently rented this van in Italy, and it was more, it was straight from the factory. I wanted to try it, had a whole shower and bathroom in it, which I can't say I didn't love. I did love the little bathroom that was in there, but it was much more confined on the inside because it had more going on in it. And in our van, we have a lot more negative space. And I really enjoy the negative space because I don't feel claustrophobic. So it's sort of a trade-off one way or the other. I really enjoy the vans that people have built, and there are amazing builds out there because they feel more homey. And the ones that come from the factory, for me, aren't as homey and as easy to sort of decorate and make your own. But they have other, great benefits. They have sort of plugins and plug into the sewage system and have a shower and all of these things that some custom vans have and others don't. So again, it sort of depends what's more important to you. But not hard to find a customized van. There are many out there.